Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Life on Track. Well, it's all about helping you get into the driver's seat of your own life. Not my life, not Dr. John Gray's life, your own life, personally and professionally. And we're doing a special Facebook Live today with Dr. John Gray because he rocked the world in the 90s. I experienced it. He transformed lives all day, every day. And it was the most amazing thing to witness. So today, and you guys know that I very rarely interview a guest as a Facebook Live. I do my own Facebook Lives, but I think I've only done this once before. So this is super, super special. And I look forward to getting into this with Dr. John Gray. Let me read his bio. Let me get right into it so I don't leave anything out. Dr. John Gray is the author of the most well-known and trusted relationship book of all time, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. USA Today listed his book as one of the top 10 most influential books of the last quarter century. In hardcover, it was the #1 best-selling book of the 90s. Dr. Gray's books are translated into approximately 45 languages in more than 100 countries and continues to be a bestseller. Dr. Gray has written over 20 books. His most recent book is Beyond Mars and Venus, Relationship Skills for Our Complex Modern World. His Mars-Venus book series has forever changed the way men and women view their relationships. John helps men and women better understand and respect the differences in both personal and professional relationships. His approach combines specific communication techniques with healthy nutritional choices that create the brain and body chemistry for lasting health, happiness, and romance. Welcome, Dr. John Gray.
Happy to be with you again.
Oh, I'm so excited you're here. And you and I have talked about in the past the differences between men and women personally, right? I have a show on that, and I'll put it in the show notes also. And we talked about the differences of men and women in the workplace, which is huge, right? I'll put that in the show notes also. Today, we're going to talk about children because you've written a book, Children. What is it again? Children come from heaven?
Children
are from heaven.
Yeah.
Children are from heaven.
It's a play on Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. So children are from heaven.
And I love that. I love that. I'm sure most of the people that are watching that are my friends on Facebook would love that as well. It's amazing. It's so cool. So good. Before we get into all of this, just for the new people that are listening, why don't you share with us how you got into doing all of this and why?
You mean my children's book or
your whole thing?
Well,
briefly, if you can.
Very briefly. I was a celibate monk for 9 years, and after 9 years, then became very interested in helping the world as a married man. And so I began teaching classes on enlightened sexuality. And then I went on to, sex is great and wonderful in the beginning, but it sort of tapers down. So how to sustain lasting passion and love. And I learned how to do that through good communication skills. And so I focused as a marriage counselor. I saw that women were constantly misinterpreting men and men were misinterpreting women. Men just didn't have a clue what was most important to women. Often they would prioritize, okay, I'm making money. And while that's an important thing, but once you're making money, there's a lot of other things in order to produce the hormones of passion for her. And in the beginning, women don't have to do much at all. And a man is very motivated to produce the hormones of passion. But after dopamine goes away, that means familiarity, we have to have communication skills that will bump his testosterone up very high and bump her estrogen up very high, because it's estrogen in women that makes them attractive to men and happy. And testosterone makes men attracted to women and much happier.
So cool. So cool. So then you wrote the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And again, rocked the world in the 90s. I mean, all over the world. It wasn't just America. It was all over the world. And
it still is. I sell about 300 to 400,000 books a year around the world in America. It's amazing. Just keeps going on since the early 90s.
I know. And then you have not just Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, but you have Beyond Mars and Venus. And then you have Mars and Venus in the bedroom. You have Mars and Venus in every area.
It's exactly. Amazing. I have a whole series of 25 books, but the most important are Men Are From Mars. And then the updated Men Are From Mars is Beyond Mars and Venus, because we're no longer when you're in a traditional relationship where the man is the provider and woman's a homemaker, to some extent, certain challenges come up where we misinterpret each other and how to improve communication. But today we have women being more independent, many times as the major provider, and men taking care of the home, are both being providers. And who's taking care of the home? Maybe nannies or whatever. But those are new challenges. So how do we face those challenges? And once again, with every challenge, when you've got a man and a woman, you've got misinterpretation. So how do you support each other best?
I love it. I love it. And then I'm going to put all of the other shows that we did that addresses all of that with men and women, with the grown-ups in the show notes, so that they can listen to those interviews as well. Today, I want to focus on the children because there's just so much confusion and so much, like the world is just changing and shifting like it always does, through history all over the world. Like it's just, that's the way us as humans, we just keep evolving and things change, the sea shifts. So let's talk about your book, Children Are From Heaven, because, everybody, my friends know that I've written character building children's books and I do the assemblies in the schools, about character. And it's super, super important when you give children the foundation of self-esteem, the feeling of security within themselves so they can address that outer world. Can we get into that? I want to hear about you and your book with how you address it.
Well, as with all my books, I tend to have sort of a yin yang aspect of one side or the other, men, women, and how we can find the balance within ourselves. Well, raising our kids, we have sort of old-fashioned techniques of using spanking and lots of heavy punishment in order to control your children. And then, so we said, well, there was trauma associated with that. So, or could be associated with that. I mean, I was spanked as a kid. I'm doing fine. Okay. So,
yeah.
So that's one. So there was tough parenting, maybe call it that. And then in reaction to that, then we came this entitlement parenting where your children can do no wrong. And a parent starts to become, instead of their parent, we might call that the boss of the house, the CEO of the house. The parent becomes their friend and tries to make them happy. And we all want our children to be happy, but for children to feel secure inside, they need to know they're not the boss. See, that's an important thing. Inner security comes when your job description fits your competence. Okay, so if you suddenly asked me to build a building, I wouldn't know what to do. If somebody's dying of a heart attack, I will suddenly feel insecure. Give me somebody who can handle that.
Right.
You don't put more responsibility on a child that they can handle. And ironically, when you indulge a child's wishes, wants, and needs as they perceive them to be, the child feels like they're the boss. They're in control of you. They can have tantrums and you will give them what they want. That's a simple version of it. When a child learns that I can throw a tantrum and get what I want, it messes them up quite a bit. Just like my dog training, if my dog lives in a big dog, but so she has a pen, and if she barks to get out of the pen, I'll never let her out. Okay. She has to learn that barking, complaining, which is she sees me doing something, she just wants to be with me. She whimpers and starts barking. And no, you can't use the barking in order to get out. Children can't use whining and complaining to get what they want. Now, this is a complex message. It's really simple, but in a moment. So if a child is upset, it doesn't mean the old-fashioned way of don't be upset. Stop crying. Don't be unhappy. You should be happy. You should be, this all sort of controlling a child's emotions in order to have a positive, harmonious environment usually causes a lot of suppression within a child of who they are.
Right. So
what we can do is not let children control us as parents with their complaining and their whining and their misbehaving and whatever, punishing us, or over negotiating with us. Just there's a time when negotiation is over and mama says, do it, we're going to do it. And that needs to be a power that the parent owns, knowing that child may not like that, want that, will cry, be upset. But if you have a way of what I call processing emotions, a child learns the most important lesson of life, which is I don't always get what I want when I want it, and I can still be happy. Okay, so if I don't get what I want, I can still be happy. So there's a journey of how to find the inner happiness, even though you can't have everything you want when you want it. Either of those things. And that is they will have an upset. They will cry. They will make faces. They'll make noises. And what we do as parents is now teach them emotional intelligence. Now, the highest value of emotional intelligence a parent can teach their child is I hear what you're feeling and use a word to identify the feeling. I know you're feeling sad, or you wanted that ice cream. I know you're feeling disappointed. And what's interesting, there's layers to this, but on the first layer, as soon as you say, I know what you want, and I know you're feeling disappointed, for a moment, the child will immediately feel better. because see, they live in a world where they think that whatever they want, you're here to give it to them. Because in many cases we are there to, if the desire and the need is appropriate, we're there. We want our children to be happy. So they don't know the difference between a healthy want and an unhealthy want or inappropriate. They're just wanting. So as they're, saying, I want this, and they're not going to get it. And what? In a sense, in their brain, they're saying, what? Don't you realize I'm your child that you want to give everything to? And you must not hear me. You must not understand me. I must get louder.
Right.
A lot of emotions of disappointment. Then you'll realize how important this is to me. So we can say, I know that you want to have, for example, ice cream, and you're not going to get it. And they go, what? First you say, I understand you're frustrated or disappointed because you want ice cream and those other kids are getting it. So you go, yes. So daddy understands. Okay. So the moment there, see, what children really need most is to feel heard and understood. They don't have to have that ice cream as much. So you identify, and the thing that parents have to know is when you identify one emotion, there's always 2 or 3 others that you want to get to for the release to take place, because they'll come back to being happy. Often they'll come back to being happy anyway, but you can teach them emotional intelligence along the way, which is understand when a child is upset, they want something, they're not getting it. I understand you're frustrated. That's why I tell parents, start with frustration. It's so cute to see a little 4-year-old go, yes, I am frustrated. It's so cute. It's very cute. Or you could say, I understand you're angry. That's another one. So many children are so afraid of acknowledging that emotion inside of them. Because if your child was to get angry, the parent would become angrier back. That's the problem. But it's okay to be angry. And then they say, I understand you're angry because you wanted this. And they go, yes. And then you go, and I understand that you need to understand you're not going to get it right away. Or you can't have that. And then they go, why can't I? And then you say, I understand you're disappointed because you thought I would want to give that to you if I understood it. And then, yes. Or other people are getting it. I don't get it. Why can't I have it? And I say, I understand. Rather than explain a lot to a child, you just want to identify and give a word for the emotion. See, they don't know what their emotions. Most adults who come into my office counseling, they don't know what they're feeling. They just are feeling, but they can't actually identify. And an example of this is when somebody's angry, they're always also afraid. And they're always also disappointed that something they expected didn't happen. So that's 3 emotions: anger, sadness, or disappointment, and then concern or worried or afraid. That's always underneath all the upsets. And if those emotions are heard, then the child feels understood and connected to you. And then they feel more at ease and they'll feel better. And then you identify, I know what you want. And we're family. And what we value is this, and we don't value that. Or maybe it's children having a toy. Oh, I want to play with the toy all longer. So, well, as a family, we share. I want the whole cake. And they start eating. Well, no, as a family, we share, or we take turns. So it's going to be your turn. Then it's going to be your sister's turn. You just have to sort of, things that we take for granted, we assume we have to say these things out loud to them after validating their emotions. So that's a powerful tool of understanding. When children feel understood and connected to the parent, they tend to cooperate a lot more. See, the whole idea here is not to have to threaten them or even use rewards, although I'm not against rewards, but just to simply, your wish is you're the guide, you're the boss, you're the CEO, you're the leader of the family here. So you're letting them know, this is what we're going to do. This is what I want you to do. And you're very clear about that.
Can you explain to the people listening, because this is key, this is so huge what you're talking about here. Can you explain to everybody listening how from birth to 8, they're programming their subconscious, the children's subconscious? Like the children are literally learning everything like sponges from their parents and their environment between birth and 8. Can you, because I don't think a lot of people fully understand this.
Even the first 3 years, they're sucking in all your unconscious processing. I mean, so when you get upset about things and you're pretending not to be upset about things, children will absorb being upset about things. One of the interesting things all the way up to particularly up to puberty, but also 9 is where they can actually begin to use logic reasoning. They can copy logic, but they don't really have that mental faculty ready. Often people say, when they're being critical of their children, they say, I'm not critical. I'm not mad that you, I'm not mad at you. It's what you did that I'm upset about. Okay. Or I'm not critical of you. It's that you did this that I criticize. It's your behavior, but it's not you. I love you. A child's brain can't comprehend that.
Right.
They can't get it that it's not me. I am what I do. There's no sense of me
Right.
from what I do.
Right.
So it's a nice thought. Even for most people, it's called taking things personally. Most adults even take things personally. You know, somebody's having a bad day, they're in a bad mood, and they, well, why are you in a bad mood? You should be in a happy mood. Now, why do we get upset when somebody's in a bad mood? Because we feel that they're implying that we failed them in some way and that we're not good enough or whatever. They're not saying that at all. They're just in a bad mood.
Right. Right.
We tend to take things personally. A simple example: I'm a teacher. I teach classes at my seminars and whatever. And if I was giving a class and teaching, and suddenly people started walking out, a part of me was like, am I not doing a good job? I'm starting to take it personally. So usually I'll usually say, I guess we need to do a bathroom break. So, and then I don't take it so personally because there's a reason other than some personal reason. So adults have a hard time taking things personally. We beat ourselves up when we make mistakes. And ironically, for many people, they don't beat themselves up when they make a mistake as long as nobody knows. If nobody knows that it's okay, I can't tell anybody. So, but when somebody knows, again, we're imagining what they're thinking about us, what are the consequences could be real or unreal.
The fear of judgment. Yeah. The fear of judgment.
With people's judgments. So we have to hide ourselves. You can't walk around, telling everybody everything about yourself. You do it in appropriate situations where people can like you and love you and want to hear what you have to say. As parents, ideally we want to be unconditional in that kind of love, which validates, affirms briefly. There's that emotion, and then there's also this emotion, and there's that emotion, and then there's clarity about what's important, what you want, and then what are you grateful for? You ask that. And so we should all be grateful that we can even have this opportunity, this family together. And let's talk about what makes us happy. And see, we can teach children how to shift from negative emotion to positive emotion. But to the extent a parent can't shift reasonably quickly, the child never learns to do that. And even the parent's not so good at it, you can teach your children when they're very pliable to learn how to go from negative to positive, rather than trying to push them always to positive. The reason for that is when you try to make children make them wrong for having negative emotions, basically, they're going to suppress them because they do everything to win your approval. They're looking for your approval, for your acceptance, for your attention as well. And what we want to do is never get them to push it down, but to put it in an appropriate setting. So the appropriate setting is, I'm listening to you and I'm guiding you through these emotions. And now let's focus on the positive emotions, what we're grateful for. And so that's one dynamic. Then there's times when your children are just not going to cooperate with you. And what do? Okay, then what you do is, if you don't have time to process their resistance, you give them a reward. I prefer rewards first and punishments. I don't use corporal punishment.
No,
for
not the 80s.
Don't actually take things away from them, but I take me away from them for a short period of time. Most people do this now. It's a timeout.
Right.
You go in your room for this amount of time and then you come out, but no phone. Or go sit on a chair. But sometimes sitting in the chair behind the teacher's desk is a little shaming, a little humiliating because it's in front of other people. So you want to try to get it out of heavy duty shame, but there is a mistake. And, what is the mistake? For me, I use with my kids, the mistake is we're out of control. Okay. So mommy and daddy, sometimes when I'm out of control and I have too many negative emotions, I take time for myself. If I'm feeling grumpy or irritable, I take time for myself. Now, you don't know when to do that. So I will be the one to tell you when to take time for yourself. And that's called a timeout. And you try to take it out of the realm of you're being punished, but you're doing something that's good for you so that we can reconnect, so that you can come back into feeling good. Everybody, when we're out of control, we don't feel happy. When we're out of control, we get upset. Right. So to come back into control, mommy will take some time for herself, or I will take time for myself. And sometimes, because you're not a grown-up yet, I will set the time for your time out. And what's interesting is it doesn't have to be very long. You just set the time. For me, it was arbitrary, but it seemed to work. A 3-year-old's 3 minutes, a 4-year-old's 4 minutes, 5-year-old's 5 minutes. The funniest thing happens is when you've got a teenager,
Yeah,
14.
I was going to say, good luck.
Well, actually, it works. This is such an interesting
15
thing.
minutes and 15-year-old.
This is very funny. Where, one time my daughter, my 14-year-old at the time, was being very disrespectful to her mother, and they're a big argument and everything. And I was never going to get in between that. That does not work. Okay. You can't get in there between mother and daughter. So very verbal emotions going.
Estrogen. Yeah.
I went to another room upstairs in the house and I called Bonnie, said, Bonnie, I need your help. Okay. So Bonnie comes out of the room. Then she can tell me, how dare she talk to me that way? I can't believe it. She needs to vent a little bit. I said, yes, yes. So then when she talked about, after I heard what was going on, she felt heard. See, that's the key thing, particularly with women and with boys and girls, and boys, particularly up to 9 years old or puberty. Around that realm, boys have the same needs as little girls. They change at puberty. Now, see, the needs we have a lot to do with the stimulus that will produce the hormones of well-being in the body. A 13-year-old boy going through puberty around that age, he needs his testosterone for well-being in his body. It increases about 5 to 10 times. So he's like a grown man at that point.
Wow.
At that point. And so it just surges up.
Okay.
Most people don't. Wow. And when it surges up, that's his body surging testosterone. He needs stimulation for it to surge up. See, my testosterone levels are a certain level, and I'm giving this interview with you. They'll go way up higher just because I'm anticipating success. I'm making a difference. I'm solving problems. Yeah. There's certain behaviors, as we talked about, and beyond Mars and Venus, behaviors that stimulate testosterone, and there's behaviors that stimulate estrogen. Lots of them. I mean, like when I was a little boy, I had a fifth grader. I was had my own little printing press, and I printed cards for people. I was a little entrepreneur.
There you go.
So making money is also a testosterone producer. It could also be sports, competition, feeling successful at something, being part of a team and having a role to play. These are all important things. Competition is really important. I have to say that because there's books like saying competition is bad, and it's not ideal for girls from one point of view. It's totally necessary for males. Competition is one of the most powerful ways to stimulate testosterone production.
But let me just make it different. That's a different kind of competition than competing with somebody to be like in the workplace, or competing with somebody like to be better looking, or, like negative competition, right?
No, there is negative competition without a doubt. Right. Negative competition looks more like when you're insecure, you will be putting other people down to win.
Right.
Okay. You're always putting people down. But the only reason you're putting people down is you don't feel confident within yourself because you haven't successfully competed. Competition can look a lot of different ways. Like in a classroom, when I'm doing my math tests, I want to be the best. Okay. Or I want to get an A. That's what those numbers are about.
Right.
Although for me, again, that comes after puberty. I believe this children should not be graded up to puberty. Ideally, they can pick 3 subjects, even after puberty. In high school and junior high school, for me, I made almost straight A's every time. Almost straight A's. So I always had this feeling of I'm almost good enough. Right now in my life, I am good enough. And I do a lot of things, but I can do one thing really good or a couple of things really good, and I get to feel like a star. Every child should feel like a star in their field of expertise. And so if you do what they do in colleges, which is you pick 3 subjects to get a grade on, and the others are pass fail, just expose yourself to it, see if you're interested in it, whatever. Yeah. So we don't want to put so much pressure on measuring our children, but we want to put them in a context where they can feel successful.
Brilliant.
But anyway, back to the whole idea of testosterone in boys and estrogen in girls. There's a huge shift that takes place there. Up until puberty, basically boys and girls are almost the same. Generally speaking.
Right, sure.
But you'll see in all the studies, boys will have certain tendencies and girls will have certain tendencies. And that's formed in the first 2 years of a boy's life. Now, first of all, you have to remember, first 6 weeks in the womb, there's no differentiation between male and female babies. After 6 weeks, there's a differentiation starts. And the XY chromosomes, the women have two X's, boys have XY. And so boys have everything a girl has. We always do. It's always inside of us. It's just we've got this Y chromosome that has an effect of negating some of our A.
Right.
Literally washes away with parts of our brain. Women have way more connectedness, and then men start losing that connectedness. And you can see this now the way a man, adult, or brain works. With a woman, you'll have literally 8 times more connective tissue in her brain. This is called white matter.
Right.
And a male will have more gray matter. The gray matter are these little pockets of focused ability, like listening is in one part of a man's brain. Women actually have listening in 8 parts of their brain. So that's why
explains a lot.
And it could be with your son as well. You're talking to his son and he just doesn't hear a word you're saying because he's now thinking about one other thing and he can't hear anything else. Little girls will tend to be able to do a lot of things and hear things at the same time.
So that's not ADD then. That's not ADD. It's just they don't have as much focus or
because of that difference. And where did that difference come from? It started in the womb. They can measure it in the womb. Then for the first 2 years of a male baby's life, he has for 2 years the testosterone levels. That's the male hormone. Men need 10 to 20 times more than a woman. Women have estrogen 10 to 20 times more than a man. So we have these real biological differences. For the first 2 years of a baby boy's life, he will have the testosterone levels of a grown man. Then it goes down after 2 years old, back to like a little girl.
Oh,
interesting.
wow.
That's that first surge of testosterone when he's for those 2 years, because his brain is still developing. He's developing the male brain, as opposed to the female brain. And so a lot of that connective tissue between all parts of the brain is dissolving.
Wow.
So he can be more masculine. So that's all happening. And it doesn't happen as much. Now we have clear research on it. Now we don't have a lot of clear research on what all of these PCBs and various things are doing to the hormones of a male. We know that, for example, certain fertilizers for frogs will make male frogs with XY into female frogs. That's happening. So toxicity is messing with mother's hormones and baby's hormones and so forth. We know that, GMO particularly. So that's all going on, affecting us. Then also plastics, drinking from plastic bottles. Just really avoid only glass. The PCBs in plastic, or any drinks that have been in water, which have been in plastic bottles. The heat goes in and it just becomes toxic in terms of what's called hormone disruptors. So hormone disruptors are occurring now massively. We see the average 20-year-old man, young man today, has 20% lower testosterone than just 20 years ago. Males are being born with dramatically lower testosterone levels.
And due to the environment with the plastics and
the mother being exposed to those things while she's prior to and during pregnancy. So this is, a tragedy that's happening. It causes it could be the biological basis of this gender dysphoria, where people don't have clarity about what sex they are. But this is a major big problem. It's also, what people don't realize is that how important it is for a child growing up to see a mother and father trusting and appreciating each other. What you'll see is the most psychological problems happen in children who don't have a father present or a mother present. When one parent is absent, their risk of huge psychological problems and anxiety and so forth dramatically goes up. Imagine a little girl growing up with never having experienced a positive man in her life. Well, why would she ever trust and want to be attracted to a man? Right. And the same thing is a boy who's never seen a father gain a mother's love. Usually when there's divorce,
which is prevalent.
Yeah, it's so common. Yeah, that's what we have. Twice as many people today don't even want to be married and are not married. Well, but 50% of men are not into, according to research today, into having a committed relationship. And so many extra women are not even interested in having children.
Oh.
So if you don't have a positive experience of relationship when you're growing up, it's hard to translate into, I want that to be my dream.
Right.
A boy has to see a man be able to make a woman happy for him to have the confidence, it takes years to build, that I can make a woman happy. So when he doesn't have that confidence of a man making a woman, his mother, happy, and his mother feeling, I can depend on a man to make me happy. See, that's a dynamic of relationship. When a boy doesn't see that, then what occurs is, if he even gets in a relationship with a girl, might be working for a little bit, but as soon as the girl is unhappy, he just can't handle it. It's like, it's too painful to see his mother so unhappy. And why it's so painful for him to see his mother so happy, and this is also key for mothers to know, every little boy, it's a male instinct, only wants to make the mother happy. Okay, all I want to do is make the mother happy. It's a great, great joy. But if the mother doesn't have a man in her life to make her happy, then that burden all goes on him. And that's called the smothering mother. The smothering mother can weaken a child enormously. He has no confidence that I can fulfill my mother, because, see, a little child can't be the source of complete fulfillment for a mother.
And it should never be expected. That should never be expected.
Like, never be expected on a little boy to make my mother happy. Because when she looks at him, like, you are the one, okay, men are no good. I mean, literally, some mothers, not all mothers will say this, but some mothers will say that men are just not good. But
I love men.
But yeah, I know you do. But here's this little boy, and the mother says, you're not like your father. I love you. You're not like your father. I love you. You're saying you're not masculine. You're something else that's lovable to me. And what is that? We don't really know. But
wow,
that causes a very close bonding between the little boy and the mother, which makes her feel really good, except that she's not going to be happy all the time. There's some part of her that's missing. You can't just depend on a child for your source of happiness, just as I can't just depend on my work to make me fulfilled, just as I couldn't just depend on my wife to make me fulfilled. Right. We're human beings, we're complex beings, and it takes many, many things to create that fulfillment. But an unhappy mother could look to this little child as, you're my partner in life, you make me happy. And that's much of a burden on a boy.
So let me ask you a question, because this is profound. In a world where divorce is just, it's more common than people staying married. I'm divorced, and I have two boys and a girl, and my boys are 25 and 21 now. My daughter just turned 20 today. And we're going out to dinner after this to celebrate all of us. I would never look to my kids to make me happy. Like, that's their job. First of all, I think even in a relationship, to count on your partner, that's codependent.
That's
like
right.
when Tom Cruise said, "You complete me," in that movie, I was like, no, who did you say that? Like, you, and like a friend of mine said, you enhance me, like, you're a compliment.
That's a beautiful thing. You enhance me. What I say is that I'm a happy person, but you can make me happier.
Right. You're adding to my happiness. Right.
Yeah. It's just the thing. I'm responsible for my happiness. And that's what we often say, self-esteem is the basis of a good relationship, is I'm not dependent on her for my mood and how I feel about myself, but I do depend on her to feel even better. That's great. Nothing like making love. There's nothing like sharing a wonderful evening together. Nothing like partnership. You got a project, helping each other. I can do all this stuff alone, but it's much better, but I can still do it alone. You see, right. That's the dynamic of self-esteem and a sense of responsibility for your happiness. And that's where and we should also know that we apply that to our children. Every children is different. Every child is different. And we're talking about the ADD thing for a moment. I had to write a whole book on ADD because I was really into, during that time, providing nutritional support along with psychological support to help heal ADD tendencies. Males, by statistics, are 2 to 3 times higher to be diagnosed with ADD. So that's where you get this male hyper-focus thing, and you get female more connected. But that same biological imbalance, which I'll talk about for a moment, the biological imbalance that gives rise to ADD, I think it's equal in boys and girls. It just shows up differently. For a little boy, it shows up as hyper-focus. Now, we see this little boy who's distracted in a classroom. Really put him in front of a video game, and he'll be hyper focused for hours. Okay, there's that tendency. His brain depends on more stimulation in order to focus. So that's what ADD is. It's an inhibited dopamine function where he requires a higher degree of stimulation for him to be focused. So the video game companies have figured this out. Levels of achievement, loud noises, bright colors, unexpected changes, new and different, new and different, new and different. All of that stimulates high levels of dopamine more than a school teacher could ever produce.
Right.
More than talking to your mother, or even trying to please your mother would produce. See, this is the problem. Once you give your child a video game, that will produce more dopamine in the brain than making mom happy.
But then how do you parlay that into real life?
I'm going to.
Oh, not you. I just meant.
So you have to realize what motivates a child. Okay, it's a boy. We're talking about a boy here for a moment, but girls have male qualities too, but primarily for a boy right now. What motivates a boy is when I feel successful. This is when the brain feels successful, you produce dopamine. Now, when you're doing something dangerous, you produce dopamine. So when boys don't feel successful, then they do dangerous things to produce dopamine. Dopamine is pure pleasure in the brain. It's aliveness. It's what motivates us. So when mom's happiness, it tends to be mom's happiness and approval. It tends to be dad being proud. Okay, when your father is proud of you, you did something well. That's a big dopamine stimulator. When the mother is happy about something you did, or she's approving, you're such a good boy, that kind of a thing. Those are positive messages that will stimulate dopamine in his brain and motivate him to seek that out again. So if something makes you happy, my mom's happy, I want to do that more. I want to do that more. Now, so that dopamine is the motivator. As soon as a child is playing video games, or eating lots of sugar, which is big dopamine stimulator. Video games are dopamine stimulators. Or doing taboo behaviors. Taboo behaviors are also a big dopamine stimulators. Anything I have to hide from my parents is a big dopamine stimulator. And that motivates us. Well, what happens when you get a big shot of dopamine is in the brain, you have all these billions of neurons, and the dopamine gets stimulated in one neuron, and then it goes to another one, another one, another one, another one. And it just gives you temporary, and then it runs out. Okay. It's like just a hit. So now you want it again and you want it again. Well, when you have a big shot of dopamine, then the receptor sites begin to become less sensitive. So you need more dopamine to get the same hit. Okay. So think about the iris of the eye. This will take a minute, and I think everybody can understand it. As you have pupils in your eyes, if I was to look out into the bright sun, they would restrict. And then I come into my office without a huge amount of light, and it would be very dark. And as I sit in the darkness for a while without bright light, the pupils will open up again, and then I'll be able to see again like normally in this room. So when you give a big hit of dopamine receptor sites like the iris will close down. And then life is sort of boring and flat for a while. And then you'll adjust and life is wonderful again. Mm-hmm. But when life becomes boring and flat, this is a kind of a boring state. I have to do something exciting. So I'll go back to the addictive substance. And that's what addiction is. Okay. And that really is what ADD is. It's basically we get addicted to high stimulation. And the brain now requires high stimulation in order to motivate us. So we're not motivated to do little things to make mom happy anymore. That just doesn't have much power. What has the power is I'm motivated to play my game. And we're all subject to this. As a husband, for me, work is a big dopamine stimulator, right? And until I overcame this, I'd be solving problems, danger, got to get it done. That stimulates dopamine. So now I'm going to come home to my wife who's just made me dinner. How lovely of that. Nice setting, relax, nothing stimulating. It's just life as usual, serotonin production, comfort, rather than danger and excitement, comfort and ease. So I come back to comfort and ease, and my brain, my dopamine receptor sites have all been closed down requiring high stimulation, there's no high stimulation there. So my wife is talking to me, and now my brain is going right back to work and thinking about what I'm going to do about that. What am I going to do about that? What am I going to do about that? And that's why this men are notorious for not being able to listen very long to their wives, because what she's saying isn't that interesting in terms of dopamine stimulation.
Okay.
I mean, sure, you've had a conversation with a man one time where you could just see him checking out.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
It's a biological. And so often what women have to do is raise their voice and create drama. You get some attention that way, at least, some engagement. and that's a function of ADD.
Right.
Now, how it affects girls is number one symptom of ADD for girls is, if I said for men, it's basically not being able to be focused on things that aren't high stimulating. Okay. It'd be like, you have to have some stimulation here, some stimulation here. And then you get someone who's just easygoing and someone you love and you care about. It's not enough. There's not enough danger there or newness there. See, familiarity and ease and comfort don't produce dopamine.
So just set off some firecrackers when he walks through the door. Keep the attention.
That's not the solution, but solution's a whole nother story. We're talking about the problem here for women, just so women can understand this, because you have, in a sense, almost the opposite problem when you have ADD, and nobody talks about this as ADD for women. I've written a whole book on it. I have my reasons for it. I think a little different than most people, but I see 50 years of seeing people with problems. You start to see that men tend to have this hyper-focused thing. They need high stimulation to keep their focus. Women tend to become overstimulated with overwhelm. See, while a male will focus in, I can't focus on all this, I'll just focus on one thing. Women don't have the ability to shut it all off. They'll take it all in.
Yeah.
And so then they become overwhelmed. So when a woman feels overwhelmed, too much to do, not enough time, not enough money, not enough attention, not enough order in my house, there are different ways it shows up of compulsivity, perfectionism, just exhaustion. I give and give and give. So you have to think about what this does is dopamine motivates you into action. What men, when it comes to the day is done, we have like magnets on our butt and we can't get up. and women can't sit down. I can't say to my wife, hey, just relax, forget about the dishes or forget about dinner. I'll take you out later. Her brain is, I have to do this. I've got this. This will go bad if we don't use this. If we got to, brain's thinking all the different things. So those are two
white matter.
What was that?
Well, that white matter.
That's right. It's all that connective tissue.
Right.
Happening. Now, and so if we come back to our kids, we just see the more we can handle our stress, it's always going to be easier for our kids to do it. And in terms of how do we overcome those tendencies of ADD, we have a whole video that I've already done with you, which is communication. Because when women can talk about their feelings, what happened, and a man can listen because she's not complaining to him about him, but things at work. See, if you talk about your feelings and he's the problem, he's just going to defend and you're not going to feel validated and so forth. So it can be other things where you share for up to 10 minutes and training him that if he can just listen, not say anything, hear you, he'll get a big hug afterwards. His wife will be happier. And why does that happen? It frees us. What can free us from the addiction to high dopamine stimulation is hormonal balance. Now, what does that mean? The reason we like dopamine so much is when you have dopamine gets produced, you feel alive, you feel motivated, you feel good. Okay, now what actually happens in the body that nobody's ever reported, and yet it's a fact, is that they don't tie all the points together. But when dopamine goes off in the brain, what happens for a man is his testosterone goes up, and that's his aliveness. And for a woman, when dopamine goes up, like newness in a relationship and all that exciting stuff, her estrogen goes up, which increases her attraction and her openness and her feelings of love and happiness. And women need at least 20 times more estrogen than men to feel romantic, and men need 20 times more testosterone for well-being and positive feelings and all that. So now think about this. Dopamine gets produced, those hormones get produced. Those are the hormones of motivation and well-being, is testosterone and estrogen. So we want to become independent of the need for dopamine to feel alive. And that
Mm.
frees us from addiction. So it's relationship that frees us from addiction. When in the relationship, I'm providing for you, the woman, something that will raise your estrogen, and you'll provide for me something that will raise my testosterone. But as we said in the beginning, I'm not the only person to raise your estrogen. I'm the helper. You're responsible for doing things in your life that will raise estrogen, and then I can top you off. And I'm responsible for doing things to raise my testosterone, and then she can top me off. It's a simple, now take that into simple practical wisdom. Men should not be expecting to be fulfilled in a relationship if you don't have a job,
Right.
if you're not making money, if you don't have enough to provide something for her that's meaningful. You have to be not looking to her approval to be the major source of testosterone in you. Okay, so I go in front of an audience, I say, they clap for me, my testosterone goes up. But that audience is going to go away. I can't be dependent on that audience. That's just like fun in life. But I need to have, knowing that I make a difference again and again and again, something within me. It's like the difference of having a lot of money in your bank account as opposed to a skill, a trade that allows you to make money.
Right.
That's a security.
Right.
It's nice to have the backup of investments and whatever, but the most important thing is I know that I have a power and ability to make money. And I think that's very important for women, but I think for women as well, it's gone overboard. I think every good thing has gone overboard.
I agree.
Women should have enough money so they can get a divorce and not feel left out on the street. Okay.
Right.
So if your life becomes consumed, and as you were talking about your own divorce, you're like a loving person, didn't work out, you didn't have the right skills for it, or maybe the wrong person. But I'm sure that you didn't badmouth that children's father.
Right.
Is that correct?
Right. Well, yeah.
To a great extent. What we find in the research, there's research on this stuff. People have gone to great trouble to do this research. Somebody needs to tell them. Women have a tendency, 8 times more tendency to badmouth the ex than men do. And that's really hurting your son a lot.
I
and
agree.
It's hurting your daughter a lot. Imagine your mother constantly saying we're suffering because of your father. Never
No. I mean, in my situation, unfortunately, he chose a bar stool over a family. So there were no dinners or sleepovers, and where's daddy? Like, and then I spoke to professionals who said sometimes you have to speak the unfortunate truth, as opposed to making things up.
Just not to see, the key there is you can say truth when it's necessary.
Right.
So not let that truth be the source of your unhappiness. That's
exactly.
You're responsible for your happiness, so that you give your children the message that they're not only responsible for your happiness.
John, let me just tell you one thing. And for everybody listening, what my 25-year-old said to me a couple of months ago. The kids go through a whole bunch of different things, through puberty and teenage years, and, they go through a lot. And my son said to me a couple of months ago, Brendan, he goes, Mom, it's not normal for somebody to be that happy, because I literally vibe and love joy and inner peace. That's my natural vibe, So I said, Brendan, isn't it a shame that that's not the norm? Like, it's a shame that the norm is the grind and people are commiserating and people are bad mouthing and gossiping. I don't gossip. I don't, if you want to gossip, don't come to me. I'm not I don't want to judge people. That's just not me. My love language is quality time. If I'm not having quality time, then it's a waste of my time. I don't want to gossip and go down that. I don't like it. But I thought it was interesting when he said that. And I was like, it's the norm. The norm is misery.
Well, that's what happened to the world today.
Yeah.
And that's a function of hormonal imbalance inside.
That's what I want to talk about. Let's talk about with the kids, John, let's talk about that, because from what I'm understanding from everything that you're saying, hormones are huge in everything from the gestational period to now. So when you mess with kids' hormones as teenagers, it can't be a good thing because they're still not developing until they're 25.
Oh, well, there's definitely no research saying it is a good thing. We should know that. There's a lot of experimentation going on and so forth, but there isn't any long-term studies on taking hormones. The only long-term studies we have on taking hormones is with adults. And in those adults, there is a higher risk of cancer. That's proven. And also with men who take hormones, you lose your testicles, okay? It's very, very graphic.
Right.
And your muscles really, as you get older, they're in pain and all these problems that can happen. Some people say that's okay. I still want all those extra muscles. They don't know that there are
Oh,
behaviors that they can do in their life that will knock up their testosterone. A lot of the men who take testosterone are bodybuilders. And so I have one guy who's this is actually combined two studies. Let me get one guy with testosterone. So bodybuilders not taking testosterone. What happens with bodybuilders is they can often have low testosterone, which is why a lot of bodybuilders take testosterone. Now,
oh,
what would that be? Working out too much will lower a man's testosterone. I learned this because one of my clients was one of these big bodybuilders. He was like a coach for the New Zealand army. Okay. Elite army, the elites.
right.
He was like an elite. So he was like
Like a
muscular,
Navy SEAL.
beautiful body man. And he came to me, I can't keep it up with my girlfriend. I don't know what happened right in the beginning. That's the newness stage, knocked up his testosterone very quickly. He couldn't get it up with her. He had no relationship issues or nothing. I said, go test your testosterone. I don't think you have any, or it's very low. And he went and he tested and he was zero. He said, how could I be zero? I've got all these muscles. I said, because you use up your testosterone making those muscles.
Oh,
So he
wow.
was overtraining.
Wow.
So there's a lot for us to learn about. But so then
Wow.
as compensation, what men who overtrain because they have low testosterone will tend to want to take testosterone. And yes, it will bump you up, but it also causes other problems, and it can cause other problems like road rage, for example. If you took too much, what happens if you have too much is that testosterone converts into estrogen. And estrogen causes the road rage. Well, something so interesting is we should know with all the case is for men, when they're angry, they're actually producing more estrogen than testosterone. The ratio of testosterone to estrogen has changed. And now what they need to do is stop talking in order for their T levels, testosterone levels, to come back up. Rather than talking about what they're feeling will raise their estrogen. So let's apply that to our little boys and girls. If a boy tends to be a little bit too sensitive, what you want is you don't want to ignore his feelings because he wants to express his feelings. But what you want to then do is counter that with things that will bump up his testosterone. And that will be very, very important. That's like timeout is another great testosterone. That's cave time for children. They all need to
Oh, wow.
bump up their testosterone, which is inner confidence. That testosterone gives you confidence. That's why but particularly for little girls, if you want to increase their softness and their femininity and their joy, or if there are a lot of negative emotions, you want to indulge a little bit longer with girls and let's talk about this. And they can get going. But when a little boy gets going, you're increasing his estrogen. And if he doesn't have a strong masculine characteristics, you don't want to go too far with that. You don't want to, you want to get him with other boys at his confidence level and his skills and have them compete. It's very, very important. What they're doing now is because males are having such low testosterone, they're starting to, some people are putting their boys in school a year later so that they'll be older than the other kids in their class, which will give them a head up, a sense of greater confidence. They will be more developed, at least in their brain, to bump up that testosterone. There's a lot of things to do to keep the testosterone up enough. And lots of boys are having the problem of delayed puberty is one thing,
Right.
which is delayed maturity. And their penises aren't as big. This you can actually see that penis size goes along with his testosterone. And this is a big deal that's happening is they're just not getting the hormones enough. And so what we can do is rather than give them hormones, you give them activities that will stimulate hormones. Let me give you an example of one of the world famous bowlers. Okay, everybody knows how to bowl. Well, a long time ago, this is a long time ago, they didn't have the machines. His dad had a bowling alley and he'd have people moving the pins back when you knock them down. And they also didn't have gutters. So this is a long time ago. But so every day he would play bowling with his dad at the bowling alley that they had, but there were no gutters and there was no machine. So his dad would be at the other end. He'd roll the ball down. And if he was going to miss the pins, his dad would always move one pin over so he would get that sound of knocking that pin down. That was a good job. Good job. He got down there. So the idea there is he had this imprint inside of him that he can do no wrong, that he's successful. and he has a competence in that area. He can do no wrong. There's a skill that he has. And that's the reinforcement of the sound, the sense of success, the effort which was put into it, and the father approval for that, being proud of him, that he at least came out and showed up. These are really key things for bumping up testosterone.
Yeah.
So you'll see that literally almost I've taught in San Quentin with prisoners, if not everyone had absent father. Okay. No father that was proud of them. No father that was proud of himself. No father whose wife was proud of him. Right. They didn't live in that world. And that world is now over 50% of males.
Yeah.
It's a really hard thing. And that world is over 50% of females who are now choosing not to be in relationships with males because they have no role model of seeing that a man can help you feel good in life. So you're more motivated to be in a relationship if you have a sense of the possibility of it working. I mean, I always feel it's successful at my workshops because there'll always be a few women who say, we talk about what they got out of the workshops, and there'll be sometimes several women who say, I'm going to look for a man now. I never. Wonderful. And part of that is for women to realize that many times there's a potential in a man that you may not be pulling out because you don't have the right skills to do it. And if you treat somebody with a certain kind of love, it will bring out the best of them. If you treat someone with not kind of love, a smothering love, for example, that was one we talked about, it will not bring out the best of a man, and vice versa. How I treat my daughters, they're all happily married, they've got kids, and they know that first you can trust a man, and they also know that how to parent. Then they suddenly want to have children. So we're in a huge crisis here in the world today, and so we need to, with our children, give them the education that they need. And I know so many single mothers. What I suggest for them is, don't feel you're being selfish if you continue to date. For your, say, I don't have a husband, so I've got to double it. I got to be a man and a woman for my children, and I got to be the father, mother. So you feel that huge responsibility, and you give up dating someone for romance and all that, because that is an adult. It took romance to make that baby. It takes romance in your life to keep creating a sense of well-being and so forth. Otherwise, children will feel the pressure of, I have to be the responsible one. And we want to teach our children responsibility. We just never want to give them something responsible that's too much for them. It's always this fine line. So I know our time's kind of ending up here, but I want to just summarize some of the things I was saying. It's in my book, Children from Heaven. A lot of what I just said isn't in that book. So I have my ideas, but 5 positive messages ultimately you want to give your children. It's okay to be different. But again, differences that make sense. All right. So it's okay to be different. Now I'm going to go out and steal cars. That's not to do that. Okay. So it's okay to be different. If you look at anybody's really, really successful, it's always they're unique in some way. It's uniqueness that creates, it's our authentic self.
Be yourself.
Yeah. Be yourself. There's nobody's got this fingerprint of mine. We all have a different fingerprint. There's no copy of it. So that's an important thing. And practically speaking, not to compare your child with your brothers and sisters or how you were when you were growing up. This is the way parents get into, I walked to school through the snow. When I was young, I did this. So, I actually compare my kids always to me. Whenever something bad would happen, I was always telling the story of why when I did something like that and what happened and so forth. So anyway, it's okay to be different. Don't get into the judging based upon comparing, but there is a good and wrong. There's what works, there's what doesn't work. This is how we do it. Try to get out of the words of that's bad, this is good. You can do that, but what I've done to get out of the judgmentalness is this is what works, this is what doesn't work. And how do you think someone feels if you do that? And so forth, and what would you like to feel? So it's that instead of good, bad, sort of elevated into what works and what doesn't work. And in situations, different things work. So that's one. Okay, don't compare your children. It's okay to be different. 2, it's okay to make mistakes. That's a really complex idea. It's okay to make mistakes because nobody wants to make mistakes. We do our best not to make mistakes. But if we make mistakes, we learn from them. And we all make mistakes. That's kind of the point I was just making. The mistakes my children make, I always tell them, I made the same mistake or some similar story. And I seem to always have them. It seems that they make the mistakes that I made. They're part of me, right? So it's not that hard if you're the parent.
And it's win or learn, not win or lose, right?
Say that again.
It's win or learn as opposed to win or lose. Like it's win or learn a lesson as opposed to you lose.
Oh, absolutely. I had
Yeah.
never heard of that, but that's brilliant. Absolutely. I'm sure
Thank
from
you.
one of your brilliant books.
Thank you.
It's always a good thing to learn. And it's a way to, you have to realize children don't have the ability to forgive themselves. One of the best gifts you can make is when you make a mistake to it. See, they don't have a sense of self yet. They're learning. So it's not easy to, I made a mistake and somebody's upset with me or something bad happened. They'll feel it's my fault. They'll just go right to I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad. And when our parents are fighting, they'll feel like it's my fault, it's my fault, it's my fault. It just tends to be that way. I could talk more about why, but that's what happens. So the more we can fight, not in front of our children, the more we can present authentically happiness together as a family, that's the greatest gift you can give your kids. And certainly people make mistakes and they get to see us forgive each other. And that's also very key. If you are a perfect parent, your child will never learn to forgive because there's nothing to forgive for. So just remember that you don't have to be a perfect parent. What you can do is be accountable within yourself, and whenever appropriate, say you're sorry to your child. Most parents never want to admit guilt in front of their children because they think then that will give their power away. Parents often think my power is I'm perfect. No, let them know that you're not perfect. You have the power because you're the parent and you're bigger than them and you pay the bills. So you have the power. So it's okay. So I look at myself, the mistakes I would make. Usually for me, the mistakes were being late. That's my whole MO. One time I was angry. I made a mistake. I apologize for that. And another time, if you do get angry at your children, you need to come back and say, I was angry with you. And what you did is you made a mistake, but it's not the cause of my anger. You never deserve to have somebody throw their anger at you. And I'm working on, please forgive me. I love you. And they'll always say up to puberty, I forgive you. That's where they have to learn to forgive, is if a parent is accountable, apologizes for something, the child will say, will you forgive me? And the child will go, yes, I forgive you. It's very sweet because they will always forgive you, but they will not always learn to forgive themselves. They sort of bury it inside as they're not good enough because they live in a world where if everything is wonderful, well, think about when you first come out into the world, everybody's happy. And why are they happy? Because of you. So we feel that we have this mysterious power to make people happy. And then when people aren't happy, what am I doing wrong? If I've done this, I've counseled so many women with low self-esteem. It's like when their parents had problems or whatever, they would carry the weight of always trying to be a people pleaser and let me make you feel better. And nothing wrong with wanting to please people, but not when it goes so far. That's the hope.
Right.
Not when it becomes where I'm trying to please somebody and you can't. That's the hardest thing for kids because all kids want to please their parents, but you have a parent who's not pleasable unless you radically change who you are. And so we lose ourselves that way. So that's okay to make mistakes. What's the next one you have coming up here?
Wait, let me just, I say, when I taught my kids when they were young, when I would say, I'm sorry, instead of my kids saying, it's okay, I would teach them to say, I accept your apology, or thank you for apologizing, as opposed to saying, it's okay. Because, it's better to say, I accept your apology. And
I love that. I've never thought of that either.
Yeah.
But thanks for the apology. Somebody just apologized to me the other day and I said, it's okay.
Right.
Thanks. They say, thanks for the apology. That's very, very good. I think very important. So the idea is still okay to make, it's not like you're a bad person if you make mistakes. So next one, it's okay to have negative emotions, to express negative emotions. We all have negative emotions. How do we handle them? And you have to, I talked about emotional processing before, because you're saying, I understand you're feeling this. I understand you're feeling this, but also what are you grateful for? But also what are you feeling happy about? And also what are you excited about? And you guide them through the negative emotions, but you don't let tantrums control your behavior in terms of, I'm going to throw a tantrum unless you do what I want. And I have 5 different skills in that book to control children at that time. We've talked about one, the most powerful is hearing them out with their emotions, coming back to helping them understand what they're upset about. If that doesn't do it, there's another one, which is you distract them with, look, if we do this now, then we'll have time for this later. The greatest motivator for a child is spending more time with you. So just that you're planning to take them to the park anyway, but if you put on your jacket now, we're going to have plenty of time for me to come inside and look at your pictures. Right. I don't know what's going to happen. We're not going to have time. We're not going to leave until we put the jacket on. So it's like, there's a lot of little skills to do. The younger they are, the older they are. But that's motivating them. But you start with the okay to express negative emotions. then to help validate them. But don't let those negative emotions cause your fear of it's going to upset my child. That's giving your power away to your child. Okay. So it's okay to want more. This is, if so many people say, oh, I want to have this. Oh, we can't afford that. As opposed to that would look good on you. Maybe one day we'll be able to afford that. It's okay to want more. So many children feel afraid to say what they want because it's just what I come up. I don't know that what I want is inappropriate. I fly first class. I see these kids coming by. Daddy, I want to sit here. No, you can't do that. Oh, yeah, one day you'll be able to do
one day.
Yeah. So one day it's possible.
Yeah.
So you try not to shame someone for what they want, but you don't suddenly, tell them you can have that right now. It's just it's what's appropriate. So it's okay to want more. And what's the last one there? You haven't already tried it out
Yes,
there.
I do.
This is my favorite one. It's okay to say no, but remember, mom and dad are the bosses. So that's when you say, I want you to do this. No, I don't want to do that. You don't get punished for saying no. You get motivated to say yes. That's the whole key. And that they don't run the show. We run the show. We don't want to be too indulgent and giving them everything they want. That's called spoiling a child. Or we don't want to be too punishing. Like, you will be happy. Right now, you will do that. But there is a place where you assert power. I call it the command voice, where as they get a little older, they want to rebel against you. And say, look, I want you to put your bike in the garage right now. Well, no, what are you going to do about it if I don't? That's where you don't fall into negotiating with them. You say, look, right now, I want you to put it in the garage. I'm not going away. We're not moving on until you put the bike into the garage. Well, what are you going to do if I don't? You don't have to say that. You're going down to their level. I'm the boss. You're going to do it. And you do it. And if they still, after like 10 minutes of one time using your control voice, and you never get angry, anytime you get angry at a child, they just had power over you. See, equanimity, firmness. And it's just repetition. I call it just simply straight repetition of what your request is. This is what I want you to do. But why should I have to do this? Right now, this is what I want you to do. There was a time to explore what their feelings are, whatever, but there is a place that parents need to know. Repetition of your command, a child will give in. And if they don't give in, they'll walk away. They'll go away. Give them some space to go away. And then they'll come back and they'll apologize. Or they learn that all that persistence, they're smart to some extent. It could have been much easier. We wouldn't have wasted that 15 minutes of and I could have just moved that bike in. And you don't bring it up. You don't punish them for it. This is in certain situations, that's all appropriate. And then up to 13, I mentioned that one example. I told Bonnie, I listened to her. She's arguing with a child. And she said, well, how should we ground her? How should we ground her? I said, just tell her she's 14. She needs to go to her room for 14 minutes. And Bonnie said, she'll just laugh at me. I said, no, she won't. You could say you're grounded for 3 years, you're grounded forever, or you're grounded for 14 minutes. She's going to have the same reaction, which is defiant of authority. And the key thing is let her go through her temper tantrum. She'll go to her room. She'll throw things on the floor. She'll make a bunch of noise. Just ignore it. And 14 minutes later, she'll come out. You say, now you can come out. And they're all calm and cool.
Right.
Time out for them to remember who's the boss and to reflect on what they did.
And as a parent, to know that that's the outcome at the end is so much nicer to know that from the get-go, as opposed to like,
right. You've got to know what you're doing here and anticipate it. Yeah. Because what's she going to do? What she wants to do, let's say you give her a 2-day grounded or something. She's going to complain to all her friends. My mother grounded me for the weekend because she argued with me, whatever. As opposed to she calls up her friends. My parents made me go to my room for 14 minutes. Right. You see, they just need to go through those feelings of resistance to find them that I have some power here, but not too much.
Right. And then by doing all of that with your children, they're becoming cooperative, confident, and compassionate human beings, which you're giving them the EQ that they need. You're so amazing. And I know everybody has to run to marsvenus.com, where you have all of your books. Is there anything on your head of your heart that we didn't talk about? Is there anything you want to promote? You were at Secret Knock, and I wasn't there this time. And I'm like, I could have given him a hug. I wasn't able to go this time. I was there, and I won the Tub of Love back in 2021. Yeah, so I couldn't believe that you were there, and I didn't actually get to see you and give you a hug.
It was really very, very fun. I spent the whole day outside signing books and taking pictures.
There
I
you
didn't hear
go.
any other speakers. I just didn't stop. Didn't stop.
Like Mickey Mouse and Disney.
It was, yes, just like Mickey Mouse.
That's
Okay, so
awesome.
one thing I want to mention for all parents, when you have a child with ADD type symptoms or uncooperative symptoms or mood and all the issues that you can go through, something that can help, you go online and you get something called lithium orotate. Lithium orotate. Now, lithium is what they give for bipolar patients. Your child is a little bipolar, they're up and down, but it's not a drug. What psychiatrists give, they give lithium carbonate. Now, in order to have it be effective, it takes 500 times the dose someone needs. So all you have to do is give the dose you need of lithium bonded to a substance that will bring it into the brain, which is a substance from mother's milk. So it's called lithium orotate. Orotic acid is in mother's milk. So they bind those two things together in a special process, and 4.5 milligrams of it in each child will immediately, you'll see the dose over a few days, one a day. And for a very young child who's having these symptoms, you just take half a capsule, mix it in some water, drink it. It's doctors don't understand this. So when I say check with your doctor, check with a super holistic doctor. Holistic doctors do know this. Most doctors will say, oh, that's a drug and has side effects. No, 500 times the dose of this mineral, it's just a mineral, has side effects. But this lithium mineral is necessary for regulating the dopamine and serotonin levels in the brain. So it takes away moodiness. It improves dopamine function. It's one of the most important things in my book. It's, by the way, it's called Staying Focused in a Hyper World. It's a whole book explaining what ADD is and inhibited dopamine function to make children more cooperative. It will change their lives. And that was one of the key things. Another one for more focus for children is 500 milligrams of vitamin C in grapeseed extract. Half the dose of vitamin C to grapeseed extract, approximately. So it would look like 500 milligrams of vitamin C in the morning and around 200 to 300 milligrams of grapeseed extract. Those children will be brighter and sharper. There's lots of research on this one. And then you can do it in the evening as well. And that will be great for the brain. Those two things are really, really powerful. Emotional issues, more with lithium orotate, focus issues, and you can do it all. It's not a big complicated stack. It's vitamin C, it's grapeseed extract, and it's a lithium orotate. Can have a huge impact. And they're all very inexpensive and they're cheap. And I've been promoting it for 25 years. It's changed thousands and thousands of people have gotten benefit from it.
Hello, everybody. I mean, welcome to John Gray. You, Dr. John Gray, you know everything there is from the hormones to like the chemicals and like everything that's going on from the brain to the toes, literally. And I mean, I can't have you on enough. And I wish you were on like everybody that I know, like everybody that broadcast, because you're a wealth of information. You say what most people are not saying. You know, big pharma is huge and medications are being pushed. And, you know, that's a whole different conversation. But that's, you know, like it's a shame. It's a shame that something so simple like what you just said, and I couldn't write it down fast enough, you know. And I'm gonna rewind this and write it down and put it in the show notes also. You have the answers, John, to so much of the chaos and the confusion that's going on in the world today, that I want people to take a deep breath, let their shoulders drop to where they belong, and listen to what you had to say throughout this whole, call it a show, this episode on Life on Track, because what you had to say was so powerful in so many different ways, from the children to the adults, to the hormones, to medical, the addictions, you know, with regard to the mind and the body and everything else. You're just incredible and you're a blessing. And I'm just so proud to know you.
Well, thanks for all the compliments. But that makes me realize another thing I forgot to say is when you have high stimulation, those receptor sites will come back up and mommy's words will become more important to that child if you take them temporarily away from the high stimulation. The receptor sites will come back up. Just like the high stimulation, the room is dark, it will become light again without depending on the sun to close the high stimulation. So it's really always alternating the high stimulation. You can't avoid it. It's not bad to have some high stimulation, but then have more low stimulation where the children say, it's boring, we'll go outside and kick the ball around. I was just watching some videos of children in China when they have no money at all for anything. All the things they do it in the dirt. They dig a little hole in the dirt and they have a little ball and they roll it toward. It's just nature. Literally,
Yeah.
when you get into the woods, that's also been shown. It's just get into nature, surround yourself in nature, and play games in nature. Uh, that will restore the receptor sites. They will begin to open up again so that now your value to them increases. You become more important to them rather than the sugar, rather than the video games.
Yes, and nature is so healing on so many levels, grounding, and it just
Yeah.
nature is so healing on so many levels. You're
And
so brilliant.
sports is just so great for kids. Whatever sport you can get them into. Like I'm thinking swimming is like one of the greatest things, just being with water or long baths and showers. Just giving children time to get away from their electronics is really, really key.
Yeah.
Uh,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, John Gray. Thank you so much, everybody. You'll see this episode here on Facebook, on our Facebook Live, and also I'm going to send it out to my email list, share it everywhere I can. And thank you so much, John. Really, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, everybody, for watching us here today. Have a magnificent day, and always remember to live onward and upward. Love you.